conference recording has been turned on.
I didn't.
Susan?
Levy Court special business meeting at Kent County Administrative Complex, 01, Levy Court Chamber, Room 203, Tuesday, January 5th, 2021, is now in session at 7 p.m.
Mike, you want
Mr.
to?
Petimage?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Just before we begin the meeting, just a brief word. We do have
made available to the public an audio conference line that they can call in and listen to the proceeding. And at the end of the meeting, as we always do, we do invite public comment. And so we felt it important to make the announcement to let the people who may be on the conference line know that this is an official proceeding of the Levy Court. We will be keeping you on mute here from our console until the appropriate time when there is opportunity for public comment, and we will provide some instruction toward the end of the meeting for the public comment phase. And at that time, we'll instruct you to state your name and then proceed with your comments. And for us gathered here in recognition that we may have people listening on the telephone line, if we can proceed our comments by stating our name, and so that people can understand who's speaking. And when we're through, if we can just let everyone else know that we're completed with our comments, that would be helpful as well. As an official proceeding of the Levy Court, all rules of procedure adopted by Levy Court are in effect, including the Mason's Rules of Order. And at that, Madam Clerk, turn the floor back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pettimaj. We'll have the invocation by Mr. Howe, the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Buxton, and a moment of silence for our troops and civilians serving at home and abroad by Mr. Sweeney. All rise.
Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for letting us to address you. We recognize your presence. We pray for your guidance in all of our procedures. In your name we pray. Amen.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor our military members, law enforcement officers, firefighters and paramedics, and other first responders who have lost their lives in the line of duty protecting and fighting for our freedoms. We also honor those law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, nurses, and doctors who have succumbed to COVID-19 virus complications contracted through close interaction with infected patients, losing their lives caring for others. Thank you.
Ms. Tanaka, could we get a roll call to determine a quorum, please?
Yes. Mr. Angel?
Present.
Mr. Buxton?
Present.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. Howell?
Here.
Mrs. Maston?
Present.
Mr. Pepper?
Here.
Mr. Sweeney?
Here.
Madam Clerk of the Peace, roll call reveals 7 present.
Thank you, Ms. Tanaka. We have enough for a quorum. Now is the time for the election of officers for the next 2 years. In a moment, the floor will be opened for nominations for the offices of President and Vice President. Pursuant to Mason's rules, nominations need not be seconded. If more than one person is nominated for an office, voting will be done by roll call until one nominee obtains 4 votes. Got to entertain a motion to open the floor for nominations for president.
I move to nominate Terry Pepper for president.
We're just doing a motion to open the floor for nominations.
We need a motion to open the floor for nominations.
I move that we open the floor for nominations for president.
Okay.
Second it.
I have a motion by Mr. Sweeney, seconded by Mr. Angel. The floor is now open for nomination.
Roll call.
Or I need a roll call. Ms. Tanaka.
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you, Lori. Now the floor is open for nomination for the office of president. Are there any nominations for president?
I move to nominate Terry Pepper as president.
Second.
I doesn't it?
Nominations do not require a second. But are there any other nominations for the office of president?
Madam Clerk, I nominate Jody Sweeney for president.
Okay.
Are there any other nominations for the office of president?
Okay. No more nominations? All right, I need a motion to close.
Move to close the nominations.
Second.
All right. Okay, Ms. Tanaka, please call roll.
Do you want my wish or
No, you're voting to close the nominations.
voting to close the nominations? Yes.
Mr. Buxton,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Howell,
Yes.
Mrs. Maston,
Yes.
Mr. Pepper,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Madam Clerk of the Peace, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Okay, 7 yeas in favor of closing the nominations for president. So now that we have nominations, we're going to take a roll call on the nomination for president as they were presented. If you are in favor of the nominee, please indicate yea for that nominee or nay if you're opposed. And if you're not voting, please indicate that you're not voting. The first nominee that receives a majority vote of 4 will be elected to the office of president. So the first nominee that was nominated is Terry Pepper.
Roll call.
Roll call, okay.
That would be a roll call for Terry Pepper.
Mr. Angel,
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, what you were saying.
We're going to do a roll call for the first nominee, Terry Pepper, for president.
Mr. Angel,
Yes.
Mr. Buxton,
Not voting.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Howell,
Yes.
Mrs. Maston,
Yes.
Mr. Pepper,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Madam Clerk of the Peace, roll call reveals 6 yeas, 1 not voting.
Thank you, Lori. So since there's 6 people, we won't need to do the second nominee. So I guess we need to do a motion to elect the president.
Well, that was the motion, and so
So,
Commissioner Pepper is
Is
been
elected
elected
as the
president of
president.
Levy Court.
okay. Next, we're moving on to the office of vice president. We need a motion to open the nominations.
I move
for
to
vice-
motion to open the nominations for Vice President of Levy Court.
Second?
Okay. Okay, Lori, could we get a roll call?
Mr. Angel,
Yes.
Mr. Buxton,
Yes.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Howell,
Yes.
Mrs. Maston,
Yes.
Mr. Pepper,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Madam Clerk of the Peace, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you, Lori. The floor is now opened for the nominations for the office of vice president of Levy Court.
Madam Clerk,
Yes.
I nominate myself, Jody Sweeney.
Okay. All right, are there any other nominations for the office of vice president? Mr. Howell?
Yes, I nominate Alan Angel.
Okay. And are there any other nominations for the office of vice president?
Madam Clerk, I had every intention of seeking the nomination as these individuals, gentlemen, and now newly minted Commissioner Maston, seeking the nomination for leadership this time around. I had solicited the support and informed the others of my intentions. To my dismay, I was informed that this is a levy court that's controlled by a Democrat majority, and for that reason, Republicans are to seek that seat. There would be no support. So that reason, the reason that I sat out choosing the president, the reason I'll sit out during this process, after I publicly state why, is for the reasons that I just stated. So while I would love to be vice president, it's not going to happen. I took a moment, 60 seconds, to explain myself, and now we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buxton.
I would ask one more time if there are any nominations.
Are there any more nominations for the office of Vice President?
Move to close the nominations for Vice President.
Okay.
Second.
Been moved and
Lori, could I get a roll call on the motion to close the nominations?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Madam Clerk of the Peace, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you, Lori. We will now take a roll call on the nominations for the office of Vice President as they were presented. If you are in favor of the nominee, please indicate yea. If you are opposed, please indicate that. And if you are not voting, please state you're not voting. The first nominee that receives a majority vote of 4 will be elected to the office of Vice President. The first nominee is Jody Sweeney. Could we do a roll call for Jody Sweeney?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Not voting.
Mr. Hall?
Not voting.
Mr. Howell?
No.
Mrs. Maston?
No.
Mr. Pepper?
Can we have clarification? Right now, we're voting for Vice President and for Commissioner Sweeney, correct?
Yes.
No. I need to change my vote, please. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time understanding you.
I'm sorry. I'll pull this down.
It must be the mask.
Yeah,
Okay. No.
okay.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Madam Clerk of the Peace, roll call reveals 1 yea, 4 nay, 2 not voting.
Thank you, Lori. Moving on to the second nominee of Mr. Angel, nominated by Mr. Howe. We'll do a roll call for Mr. Angel for Vice President of Levy Court.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Not voting.
Mr. Hall?
Not voting.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Madam Clerk of the Peace, roll call reveals 5 yeas, 2 not voting.
Thank you, Lori. So the motion to close the nomination and to elect Vice President Angel, Vice Chancellor, Commissioner Angel is elected as the Vice President of Levy Court. I'm still thinking I'm in Chancery Court mode, sorry. So now the meeting is now turned over to the incoming President, Mr. Terry Pepper. Thank you.
Okay. First off, I'd like to thank everybody that supported me. It's a great honor. I hope to live up to what you picture your president to be. And we've got a lot of work to do over the next couple of years. I look forward to working with each and every one of you and get some things done. I know we've got a lot to look at and a lot of decisions to make, so hopefully we'll make them as a group and all be in agreement. With that being said, at this time, we need to adopt some rules and the agenda and so on and so forth. The first item is adoption of rules of procedure of the Levy Court. Need a motion for that and a second.
Mr. President, move to adopt the rules of procedure of the Levy Court.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Sweeney, second by Commissioner Maston, to approve the adoption of rules of procedure of Levy Court. Ms. Tanaka, can we have a roll call on that, please?
Mr. President, Mr. President.
Mr. Buxton.
Yes, sir. I have a question or two on the items in front of us before we vote on this. It's a simple one, maybe more procedural. In the items of which I have reviewed, which is, kind of symbolic, we kind of do this every 2 years, what have you. Are these items in here things that Mr. Pettit, Demise, Mr. Eliason, that we could make adjustments to periodically throughout the next year, if we chose to? Not saying we should.
My take would be, yes, if there are rules that Levy Court from time to time wishes to revisit or to adjust, you have the authority to do so. But historically, we always adopt the rules, and they're reviewed ahead of this meeting by the attorney to just make sure that they're consistent with our current practices, which I believe Mr. Eliason has performed, and we believe they're consistent currently with the way we are conducting business. But certainly they can be amended.
I totally agree. These are the rules that have historically been in place. Can they be amended? Yes.
Those in here possibly are statutory requirements, state law, or are they, do we know that they're all county enforced, I guess we'll call it statutes? You don't have to go line by line, but do you know that answer?
Yes, I think the aspects that deal with things like public notice and that sort of thing are statutory in nature. There are other elements of this, such as the arrangement of our meeting agendas, how the agendas are put together. Those are decisions that rest with Levy Court, but they're incorporated in here. So I think it's a blend of both statutory and rules that the commissioners have agreed to. Mr. Eliason, would you?
I do agree. The FOIA is codified in here. The state statutes are codified in here. Other elements are sort of Kent County centric, if you will, in terms of the way the Levy Court has done business for many years.
One last one, and again, we won't be here long. If I was to propose in, let's say, two meetings from now, that I think that item 1.4 is something that I'd like to discuss in a committee meeting for the potential purpose of change. Now, I just picked that one randomly. Mm-hmm. In this language, is that required to be approved by leadership? Or is the shall term in there something that a commissioner is able to move into a committee, irregardless of the leadership setting the agenda? I'm just curious if that's true now. I've never asked that question. It presents itself tonight. We have a minute, so I'd just like to know, what is your take on that? Given the adoption of the rules tonight, is that possible to do? That hypothetical situation, am I able to do it without the approval of leadership? In other words, can leadership prevent that from occurring? 1.4. If I wanted to have that discussed in committee for the potential of change, and guys, it could be 1.2, whatever.
If Mr. Eliason, if I can begin, and then maybe you can fill in.
Go ahead, please.
Generally, the rules establish that the president of Levy Court controls the agenda, and so for purposes of creation of the agenda, it's the president's call, and we work that through leadership. That's been our practice. There's also provision in here that says that any commissioner can introduce an item at any business meeting. And that's kind of where the rule ends. And I would ask the attorney then to pick it up from there. And I'm not sure, once something's introduced, is it destined for consideration, or can it still be kept off an agenda? I'm not sure the answer to that.
I'd have to look into that. I can't answer that at this moment, but I'll keep reviewing here while we're talking.
I'm guilty of being here at 3 o'clock and having nothing to do, so I read through it. And I looked at the term shall attached with, and I love shall versus should. Shall really is a definitive term. And it would matter, right? If you were interested in getting something into a committee for a discussion and you had been frustrated at times in the past. And I haven't been. So I'm not stating for the record now that I have an axe to grind. I don't. But I would like clarification on that. So yeah, if you could help me with that at a later time, that'd be great. All right, thank you. Apologies for holding the meeting up.
Mr. Angel, Commissioner Angel.
Thank you, Mr. Buxton. Actually, I have two items I wanted to bring up tonight, two for adjustments of rules. I thought this would be the most appropriate time, and it's just a majorly, just a wording change. On Rule 4 agenda, on page 5 of 13, section 4.2, A and B. If you strike out the leadership meeting is normally held on Tuesdays. It's just as determined by leadership. That way, as leadership changes, that won't have to be changed. Just to make that a wording change. And on B, the President Levy Court, or in absence of President, the Vice President, we usually also have it added in other places where the longest serving member also could take the meeting over if in either absence of the President or Vice President be added. So it's consistent and contiguous.
So which one, where are you on the first one?
4.2 A and B. Strike out held on Tuesdays and put determined by leadership, as determined by leadership.
Mr. President.
Make sure you're looking at the
Buxton.
business meeting rules, not the standing committee rules.
President Angel and Mr. President Pepper. That's why I asked for clarification, which I was confident of, that we could make adjustments to this a month from now if we so choose. Tonight is not the night. I'm not entertaining or desiring to make any of these changes tonight. I just wanted to know if we had an opportunity, take a closer look, some of your suggestions maybe. I personally don't have any off the top of my head, but I may. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that helps with this paper shuffling right now, but I would not be in support of any strike-throughs or additions at this time. But I would be supportive of doing it 2 weeks from now or a month from now.
Mr. President, Mr. Pettimage, is the process to bring this in front of a committee to discuss, move it to a business meeting to vote on?
Well, absolutely. If there was a proposal to amend, now you could amend it tonight. You're adopting these tonight. That's the goal anyway. If there were minor adjustments that you wish to make as part of a motion tonight that's clear to everyone, we could make that as part of the motion, such as the first point that Commissioner Angel made, which was Tuesdays or any other as determined by leadership. The second part of Commissioner Angel's inquiry, though, I think is covered in a different section in the rules. The reference you were making at 4.2b is regarding the agenda. But if you look at page, not to get in the weeds here, but look at page 4, 2.12, with respect to presiding over meetings, it says the president presides over meetings in the absence of the president, the vice president, in the absence of both, the most senior elected official on Levy Court presides. So I think that aspect is addressed.
Yeah, that would be covered. It was in an earlier number in this document anyhow.
The difference of meetings is a business or another meeting, but for setting the agenda, say a COVID came in and the president and vice president weren't able to attend or were ill, there's still no agenda. There's no way of moving it forth to, that's why I picked up on that and wanted to move it over just to include it in case something happened. I was trying to be proactive instead of reactive to have it. So you could still have 4 votes. So, but the same time, I just want the language to be contiguous, like it was within the 2.2, whatever it was that I read it in. That's why I was bringing it forth tonight.
Okay.
So in order to do that, we'd have to have a motion to make those amendments tonight and then have the commissioners vote on them.
I believe it may be more appropriate that we, since it's just coming up, that my recommendation would be you adopt these as presented, and then we can bring back amendments, make sure we get the language right, rather than try to craft it here on the floor. I'd like Craig the opportunity to look at it, make sure that what Commissioner Angel's suggesting is addressed properly, so it's kind of hard to do it on the fly, but if it was a very simple correction, like the first point that he made regarding normally meeting on Tuesdays or any other day as designated by leadership, I mean, that could be easily incorporated into a motion. The second one gets a little more, I think, technical, and we just make sure we get the language right, that's all.
Yeah, and since Commissioner Angel brought these up tonight, I would ask that the other commissioners review them and we put everything together on the same agenda instead of trying to piecemeal it. And so instead of doing that tonight, Commissioner Angel, I think that we can put that on the agenda real soon. I don't know when that would be, but it'll be sooner than later because we haven't had a leadership meeting to determine the schedule. So let's do that. Let everybody have an opportunity to review this and again and determine if there aren't any other changes. So we can do them all at the same time. But I would propose that we adopt it tonight and move on.
Fine. I also had time in between our last meeting to look at this too. So and the rules for regulations on how to run meetings. So I have no problem with that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I guess we're still at the adoption of rules of procedure of the Levy Court, and we had a motion.
Move to approve.
We got a motion by Commissioner Sweeney and second by Commissioner Maston. Roll call.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. 7 yeas. Rules, adoption of rules of procedure of the Levy Court has been approved. For now, the next item would be adoption of rules of procedure of standing committees.
Move
Make
to
a
adopt the
motion.
rules. Go ahead, Joanne.
I make a motion, we adopt, that we do the adoption of rules of procedure of standing committees.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Commissioner Masson, second by Commissioner Sweeney to adopt the rules of procedure of standing committees. Need a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. 7 yeas. Reveals adoption of rules of procedure of standing committees. Next item is additions to the agenda.
Move to approve the additions to agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Sweeney, second by Commissioner Angel to approve the additions to the agenda. Unless there's any questions, roll call, please.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals the additions to the agenda have been approved. Move on to adoption of the agenda.
Move to approve the adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Sweeney, second by Commissioner Angel on the adoption of the agenda. Roll call, please.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. 7 yeas reveals adoption of the agenda is approved. The next item is appointment of Levy Court Attorney, Mr. Craig T. Eliason.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Sweeney. Any roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Next item is appointment of row office attorney, Mr. Craig T. Eliason.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Hall, the appointment of row office attorney, Mr. Craig T. Eliason. Roll call, please.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. 7 yeas confirms the appointment of Craig T. Eliason as the row office attorney. Next item is appointment of munitions attorney, D. Barrett Edwards.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Maston, second by Commissioner Hall to approve D. Barrett Edwards as the munitions attorney.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Mr. D. Barrett Edwards is the munitions attorney. Next item is appointment to the Board of Assessment Review Attorney, Mr. Craig T. Eliason.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Sweeney. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda are the appointments of standing levy court committee chairpersons, and I have prepared that for this evening, and I'll recite those to you, and we'll get you a copy of that. The first item is Community Services Committee. Commissioner Jody Sweeney is the chairperson of that, and I'm taking the IT part off of that and placing it under Administration Committee. The Planning Services Committee, it will be Eric Buxton, and everything remains the same under that. The Public Safety Committee, which was the committee that I chaired, which is over 30% of our budget, will be Jeff Hall. The Administration Committee will be Alan Angel, with the addition of the IT. Finance Committee, Joanne Maston. And the Public Works Committee be Glenn Howe. With that, any other business? Any public comments?
Mr. Kennedy, do we have any callers on the line? Okay, if the caller who is listening via the conference line wishes to address Levy Court at this time under public comment, please press *1 on your mobile device and we can allow you into the meeting. That's *1 on your mobile device.
She unmuted us.
Do we have someone who wishes to speak? Apparently they're not ready to speak, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any commissioner comments?
Mr. President?
Mr. Buxton?
Thank you. In the packet was the minutes from 2019, 2 years ago. And there were commissioner comments there, and so I reviewed my comments, and I'd like to echo those. Despite my comments earlier and the disappointment that I expressed at that time's passed. So it's all good. Congratulations to President Pepper, Vice President Angel, the rest of the commissioners. Commissioner Maston, welcome aboard. I look forward to the next 2 years of continuing to do what the focus has been. Don't focus on who gets the credit, just focus on getting things done. I think one of the biggest things that I expressed in these comments and the ones that I want to articulate tonight, communication, communication, communication in advance, unless it's not possible. That is the only request that I had when I first was elected and I sat with President Bana. That's the only request that I'll have now that I have new leadership for the first time in my tenure. I said, I'd just like to have a heads up. Yeah, I don't have to be in agreeance. You don't have to seek my approval. I am being selfish right now because I'm just stating what I'd like to see happen, but that's it. Just, I like to play a role. I like to participate. I like to help out. I don't need credit. I don't want credit, but I definitely like knowing what's going on. So with that said, that kind of surmises what I said 2 years ago. That's what I'll end with tonight. I look forward to the next 2 years. I think we can get a lot done. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buxton. Any other commissioners have any comments? Commissioner Sweeney?
Thanks, sir. As I said when I took my oath, that when this night's over, we're all friends, always have been, always will be, and I appreciate that. I just would like to express my disappointment at losing Information Technology Committee. I have nearly 40 years of experience in technology, 40 years. And to lose that, especially when the county is looking at so many projects that are completely embedded in information technology and putting it back under administration with the chair that really has zero technology experience, just really a disappointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Any other comments?
President Pepper, just one question, being the newbie here. Looking at the appointments to external committees, just a quick question. Can I safely assume that there's someone here that can tell me, at least with the items that I've been assigned, who the point of contact is, so that I can find out when the meetings are and make sure I'm in attendance?
I'm certainly that Mr. Pettitamaj and Ms. Tanaka, between the two of them, they can give you all those times.
All right, I'll touch base with you, Laurie. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Angel?
Thank you. And I understand Commissioner Sweeney's, I don't have experience. That is correct. There are things that we're just going to have to say we agree to disagree on. I gave him that under my committee because of his experience. And unfortunately, I felt that if I was to become vice president again, I'd like to take a different direction and communicate also, make sure everybody's on board with it, including Mr. Pettitamaj, that we are moving forth in a direction that we need to move in. And that's all I'm going to say until we have that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Angel. Any other commissioner comments? If not, you all noticed that I just handed out the presidential appointments to external committees and boards, and did some changing around. I'm added some committees also. We have a City of Dover liaison, and we never have had liaisons to the other municipalities, major municipalities. So Commissioner Angel and Commissioner Hall, and I'll remain on that committee also with the City of Dover, since I've been on it since the beginning. But I've also added City of Milford liaison, which is Commissioner Buxton.
I gave you those.
City of Harrington liaison, which is Commissioner Howe. And Town of Smyrna, Commissioner Maston. I think she's very familiar with Smyrna, and she can be a great liaison for us there. And and Commissioner Sweeney, I added liaison to the towns of Camden and Wyoming. And once this COVID thing clears, I would like for us to engage in meeting with those municipalities again and be more robust this time. City of Dover, we used to meet with them on a regular basis, and we've met with the City of Milford on occasion and City of Smyrna on occasion. But I would like to get some kind of robust schedule set up that we meet with them on a more frequent basis to discuss things that are in common between the municipalities and the county. So that's why I added those on there as some of the things that you'll be doing under your the committee, external committees and boards. So, but if you have any questions, you can talk to me later about them. But thank you for that.
Yeah, President Pepper, one more comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Shoot. Currently, I am the Town of Smyrna contact at for the KEP. I was assigned that as mayor by past President Banta, and then I'm appointed by the mayor. So I've been 4 years for the KEP. So I'm assuming I can still stay on that?
You'll be on that as my designee.
Okay.
By statute, by ordinance, the position is the president's, but you'll be my designee.
Okay, thank you.
Most of those meetings are early in the morning.
And they're great, very informative.
Mr. President,
And you're
if I could-
familiar with them, so you can be a smooth transition.
Mr. President, if I could address that also. Commissioner Maston, that would, I believe what I heard was President Pepper's having you as his designee, so that frees up the seat from Smyrna that needs to get reappointed. So the mayor will need to be notified that that seat is available for appointment.
I can let Mayor Johnson know this evening to go ahead and make an appointment.
Okay, very
Okay,
good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Angel.
Questions that Commissioner Buxton and I brought up in next committee meeting about the rules changes. If we could have that added to the agenda, then that we already have that discussion, so we'd already be starting. Thank you.
That'll be on the next appropriate agenda. Any other commissioner comments? If not, we are adjourned. Well, I guess we do, don't we? Laura, you fell down on that one. We need to have a motion and,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, this is probably the only meeting that I have that we vote on adjourning. So, take me a while to get used to that. So, well, I need a motion to adjourn.
Approve. Move to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Maston to adjourn. Lori.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes?
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. 7 yeas. We are adjourned.
Conference recording has stopped.
I can't pay anybody without it.
According to Mason's rules.